What is up, everyone? Welcome back into Dim Planets. We are talking all sorts of things today: astrology, Bible, Jesus, religion. Yay. This is totally non-controversial at all. No one's going to give me any feedback whatsoever. No one's going to be upset by the fact that I say that the Bible is actually a book of astrology. No, we're not going to focus on any of the feedback today. We are focusing on the pure fascination that so many scholars and so many astrologers alike, whether you're on the science spectrum or on the spirituality side, there is so much to look at the Bible for clues to, including our own zodiac. So without further ado, let's kind of bridge the connection between what I'm talking about. Astrology is a very ancient practice. If you guys are not aware at this point, I feel like we might have a couple more steps to take. So we'll go back to the fact that astrology is not horoscopes. Astrology, horoscopes are those little future predicting sun sign things that you find in the back of magazines. It's probably what you've been reading in Cosmo and Vogue and all the other random people that try to capitalize on astrology. All of those things have been kind of almost commercialized in hopes of catching on. But astrology is the actual study of the celestial bodies at the time of your birth. That's a great place to start. Also at an event, for in a relationship, companies, whatever you can imagine, there are astrology charts that can be done for it. So kind of bridging that gap is the history of what has happened between astrology as we know it. You know, astrologers now, such as myself, are very much able to start their own practices and kind of learn from the internet and all the various resources. But what was astrology back then? So we go back all the way back to the beginning, where I guess you could say things might have been a little bit murky. There wasn't television to distract them. There wasn't radio. There wasn't a lot happening besides natural patterns of the earth. Conversations and discussions, writing, a lot of the almost forgotten arts these days. Writing seems to be something that a lot of people enjoy the idea of, but maybe not so much the process. It's not easy. And ancient astrologers found out the hard way through having their beliefs and their life's work either questioned or doubted by so many. So a lot of astrologers that did practice back then either kept it to themselves or kept it within their community. There were a lot of communities back in the ancient times that specialized in astrology. The Essenes are a type of people that influenced Jesus's entire career and works and teachings and movements. And they were very, very in touch with astrology. And how I know all this is through my general curiosity of, I think I was just born with this. Gemini moon, you're always going to have a natural curiosity, but you dive a little bit deeper into the ninth house Pisces Mercury side of me, and I always want answers, and I will find them. When I was younger, when I was growing up, I, much like a lot of people that I feel like have found astrology and the occult practices and divination tools later in life, I was raised in the church. I was raised to go to Sunday school in the mornings, on Sunday mornings, and go sit through the service. And then there's Bible study on Wednesdays, vacation Bible school, at least a minimum of a week every summer. There was all sorts of, I guess, propaganda, if you want to call it that, to why I needed to develop my relationship with Jesus. And I was like, this seems a little excessive. I don't know where to start. And when you start working with the Bible, it's an incredible historical book. There is so much to be learned from this book. And there are so many lessons in the, I guess, inner workings. And if you can translate the context from ancient times to now, there's so much that you can spend all of your time and efforts just studying the Bible by itself. There should be another study of the context of the Bible, because when you look at the context of so many of the older words and the older explanations of why things are linked together, you might see some, I guess, phrasing of text saying, no, you guys do not use astrology. It is a work of the devil. And that's what I was kind of raised with, was anything witchcraft wise, like even to the point where some of my family members were not allowed to celebrate Halloween. I was not raised in that extreme of an environment, but I had questions, and I always have questions. And so that's why I feel like the church really fascinated me with all their beliefs and kind of rules and mandates. And I'm like, okay, well, if I live my life by this, then I'll be all right. Right. Because like, as long as you are good to other people and treat others how you want to be treated, I kind of felt like that was the golden rule. And that's all you really needed to take from the Bible. So I just left the church scene and was kind of over that whole part of my life, mostly because of the control and the judgment that came with it. There wasn't a lot of open-mindedness. There wasn't a lot of wiggle room. And we were just supposed to take what this really, really, really old book was telling us, what was the word of God. And it's very difficult for a lot of people to hear the story of the Bible and let it resonate so strongly with you, because the story of the Bible is kind of one that has been stolen in ways. So we're going to get to that in a little bit later, but still connecting a lot of my spiritual journey with my religious side. I was very tentative and very skeptical of a lot of things when I first got into astrology, and knowing that I had a relationship with religion in some level of my body and some level of my subconscious, I was worried that this was like going against something that I shouldn't be looking into. So not very many people can be like, so naturally I found an answer that worked for me. Because when you ask the question of like, who are these people who wrote this book to tell me how to live? If it's not the word of God or the word of Jesus, should I even be paying attention to it as a Christian? There were so many kind of like empty points. And so filling in the gaps was what I feel like astrology really did for me, because knowing that the celestial bodies have been studied since the dawn of human existence, and people have looked to the sky for answers, and the answers have been written in the stars. Are they the answers that everybody wants? Probably not. That's where I feel like you can do your own research and your own investigation. One really incredibly powerful set of scriptures was the Gospel of Mary Magdalene for me, seeing that there were still, I think it's 1-6, the first pages of her scriptures are gone, and there's missing scriptures. I believe is in 1889 when the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And so that was part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, was the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and finding that her book was almost like the most perfect example of the divine feminine that I've ever really found. And it was the moment that Peter, which was one of the disciples, who was actually known in the Zodiac to represent Aries, because if you're looking at the book, the Bible, as a representation of the Zodiac, the 12 disciples were also representatives of the 12 tribes of Israel and also the 12 signs of the Zodiac. So it was really cool to kind of see that correlation, which we will get to later. But Peter, of course, being an Aries male, needed to question this moment that happened right after Mary visited the tomb of Jesus after he resurrected. She saw his light body. She saw that he had not been trapped in his physical death form that they last saw him in after the crucifixion. Mary was talking with him, and it wasn't the type of talking where they're audibly having a conversation. It's not like you're going to roll up on Mary and Jesus and hear what they're talking about. It's the type of communication that you can only feel when you have a divine connection with someone, and when you have the open-mindedness that Mary had. And Mary Magdalene was also a very mistaken character in the Bible, which we'll definitely get to later when we talk about the 7 sins that Jesus apparently exorcised out of Mary's body. But Peter was like, who is this woman telling us anything about Jesus? Why would he pick her to talk to over all of us? And it was in that moment that I think the Bible would have had to address that Jesus and Mary were probably more than just hanging out and talking about life concepts. They were very close. They have been referenced as man and wife in multiple instances of the Bible. There's so many Marys. There's Mary, Jesus' sister, Mary, the mother, and then Virgin Mary, that's Mother Mary, and then Mary Magdalene. Miriam of Magdala Magdala was where Mary, or Miriam as she's known in ancient terms, met Yeshua, which is Jesus. And I know all these names and all these terms and everything, and I feel like we're like integrated. I feel like Jesus and Mary was almost a story that doesn't seem that ancient. It's a story of two people that fell in love and traveled the world together, sharing their stories of ancient and also current lessons. You know, the lessons that they can take from the other times where in the Bible, the Old Testament, you one, don't hear the term devil. Also in the King James version of the Bible, you don't ever hear the term devil. But the Old Testament really cast a light on like, oh, astrology and divination tools are sinful and all this stuff is bad. That is also where a lot of the archaic beliefs kind of come from. And the explanation of the Old Testament can kind of be seen throughout the New Testament when you actually hear from Jesus. And so the book that really kind of made it seem all real to me and all very interconnected and the opposite of an evil practice was Dolores Cannon's Jesus and the Essenes. While this is not like a stereotypical religion book or book on religion, I think what Dolores Cannon does with quantum healing hypnosis therapy is incredible when you talk about the Akashic records, past lives. And she took one of her clients and one of the people that was seeking her out, which Dolores Cannon was known for being an incredible hypnotherapist and very much a pioneer in hypnotherapy. And with Dolores's work, she had been taking people back to past lives. Her book, 5 Lives Remembered, is the first book. They had combined words there. That you can really see the benefit and the truth of past lives. And while not everyone believes in reincarnation, that's totally fine. Even Christians believe in resurrection, which is a wild ass concept to begin with. So it's not that far off that reincarnation would be a thing. Jesus and the Essenes, I have it right here, actually. I'm not even trying to sell it. It's just literally one of my favorite books. It talks all about how everything began. It talks about how this even came to be, how she came to find a person that could go back to the ancient times of the Essenes, one of the most highly, not even controversial, it's highly unknown communities in the biblical times. The Essene community was incredibly closed off and misunderstood. And this book covers almost one of the most personal accounts of working with Jesus that I've ever heard. And while the Bible is incredible because it connects you to the actual words of Jesus being interpreted and written down by people hundreds of years later, the quantum healing hypnosis therapy session that Dolores has at the very beginning with her client that comes in leads us back to an ancient time of mind-blowing information, to the point where even scholars have looked back on Dolores's work throughout the quantum healing environment and seen how her information and the information from those sessions have actually helped people loop back in history-wise, like little filling in the gaps kind of things. So finding a personal account of someone that walked with Jesus is wild, an absolutely wild concept. So keeping your mind open and checking out that book is highly recommended because it helped me really connect. So I have the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which I think I talked about before, and this is here, and it's by Jean Yaez. It's very French sounding. I have the links in the description, I promise. Like, I'm not just gonna butcher the name and then not tell you, but the Gospel of Mary Magdalene has the intro and everything. And it really coincides a lot with Dolores's book, but the entire message, I guess, of Jesus and the Essenes is talking about how throughout history, things have been pushed and linked with all sorts of connections between astrology and the Bible and Jesus, and if he was real, and all the timing and all the events of the Bible, like down to the Star of Bethlehem. Dolores gives an incredible insight to, or gives an incredible look to what the Star of Bethlehem actually was. And in astrology, that's where we can really dive in and be like, all right, so we might not have known actual people alive back then. We might not have known if Jesus was real or not. But the one thing we can track, which is incredible, the planets. So naturally, that's where we can get a lot of information about the actual astrological connections to the Bible. One of the things I wanted to go into is just like a really brief history of astrology to begin with, because it did not start with Jesus. Obviously, we need to go back a little bit and just cover that. Ptolemy wrote Tetrabiblos, which was the 4 books. And it's kind of like the foundation of Western astrology, very Greek. He wrote so many different things that was like the esoteric knowledge passed down to him. The Hindus created the 12 houses of the sun system. Egyptians created the birth chart. The Chinese added animals into the astrology wheel and connected the different houses with different animals. And then in Greek, the zodiac actually means circle of animals. So zodiac means circle of animals in Greek. So it's like you can see the connection of humans and nature. You can see the connection with, especially in ancient Greece, of the gods with nature side by side of them. Ancient Greece, the duality aspects, male and female, of course, but also between man and beast. A lot of the Greek mythology and a lot of the ancient texts that you see from that time during ancient Greece was a lot of hybrid people and animals creating things, and the connection and the duality between gods and humans was represented a lot of times between them showing up as animals in nature or them taking over the bodies of animals in nature. So it's kind of cool to see how that evolved. And of course, there's so much more information about the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians. All of those cultures all had connections to the ancient practice of astrology. However, how do you even begin to talk about the controversy of the Bible and the bridging between astrology of the Bible and the true history without talking about the fact that the Bible is kind of a ripoff of ancient Egyptian stories? Yes, if you haven't heard it already, now you have. And while I'm not trying to completely diminish this book, I respect the Bible because I think it's a lovely historical group of stories that we can interpret and learn from daily. However, we're going to move to the actual OG story, the story of Horus and how he came to be. So there was a time in my life in the last 5 months that I decided I wanted to give in to my inner child and my love of ancient Egypt and how that all started for me in kindergarten, I think with King Tut. And I just started from there and became addicted to the idea of all the hieroglyphics and the afterlife and all the rituals and all the cool things that ancient Egyptians did, because I was like, this is fascinating. Then I discovered horses and forgot about ancient Egypt. So my ADHD definitely kicked in, but ancient Egypt was a huge interest of mine. And it was so natural for me to learn about it. It didn't really seem forced. So fast forward to December 2021, I enrolled in the ICM for the Priestess of Isis program. Very, very, very great program for those of you seeking any sort of connection to Isis and the divine feminine. Because when I say Isis, I'm not meaning the terrorist group that the CIA created. I'm talking about the goddess of 10,000 names, Isis, and her counterpart, Osiris, who was her brother and also her lover. Their mom and dad created the stars and earth and also gave birth to the gods. And that was, I believe, Geb and Newt. And so don't get mad at me if I'm wrong about that. I'm really bad at pronouncing anything, really, even when it's things I love. But when they were having their god babies, essentially, it was a huge, almost like insult to Ra, the sun god, being like, wait, so we need anything more than just me? And so in order to combat that, there had to be like a loophole of days that gods could be born. And it was the last 5 days of the year which is known as the 26th through the 31st of December for us. So the fact that Horus, the sun god, was born on December 25th means that the winter solstice point that we always talk about, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, that time period is when the sun doesn't die in the sky, but it doesn't rise and it doesn't lower any further. It's at its lowest point and the days are now shorter. And so that is known as that winter solstice. And that's also happens to be the gateway into a lot of the ancient gods being born. So Horus is no different than that. He happens to be the kickoff point. And then the 26th to the 31st is the loophole when gods and goddesses can be born on this earth. So let's get back to Horus. And Horus is closely, the storyline that's ripped off of him would have to be Jesus's. Horus was born to earth parents, Mary and Seb, which sound very close to Mary and Joseph, the way that Jesus was born to earth parents while being the son of God. Horus also had a virgin mother, but virgin in that context, back in the ancient times and when the Bible was written as well, meant clean or pure. So like almost like a golden light surrounding them type of virgin is that kind of like holy energy you see depicted in a lot of, especially the Renaissance time. But that is not necessarily meaning that they've never had sex before, but they are clear and pure of channel. And virgin also happens to be Virgo in the zodiac. So later in the Bible, I think that is a little bit more symbolic than versus when we're talking about the ancient Egyptian story. But back to Horus's story, his enemy was darkness, aka Set. So there's a story that every morning Horus would wake up and be the king of the day, and then he would have to battle night. So every night Horus would die and then have to rise again. It was just this very intense storyline, right? Horus was created out of intensity. Isis, the goddess of 10,000 names, was in love with her brother, Osiris, and they were very interconnected. So naturally, when you see two people in love and two people, maybe brothers and sisters, probably not supposed to be in love, kind of weird these days, unless you're in Alabama. But now in this time, you're going to have to like bring in the context. Now we're talking about these two powerful beings, magical beings that in the womb, it was even said that they had to separate them because they were just trying to consume and be with each other all the time. So the level of closeness they had was insane. Set, their brother, was very jealous and decided to kill Osiris, ripping him into pieces, 14 pieces, and spreading him all over the place. So naturally, you do what one does when your ex disappears. You go searching for every part of their body and piece them back together and make a zombie. While that might not be the actual storyline, historically, what the ancient Egyptians tell, I apologize. That was my version of it. But the only part of Osiris that she could not find had been eaten, I believe, by a crocodile was his penis, or the phallus is what they call it. And so she decided to make one herself, and it was going to be the golden phallus, the phallus that helped conceive Horus. And so with her magic and piecing Osiris's body back together, she had the Holy Spirit come in and help with the process of conceiving a child. And so she got pregnant and conceived of virgin birth of pure intentions, her son Horus. So when Horus was born, the Eastern Star is what everybody was looking for to kind of like decide, like the three wise men in the Star of Bethlehem. Horus's version of that was the Eastern Star. And I find that interesting only because the Eastern Star is Venus. Venus is also known as the morning star, but it's in the eastern sky, part of the sky, every morning right before the sun. So it's known also as the morning star, which is translated to Lucifer. So Lucifer actually means morning star. So Lucifer and Venus have a very powerful connection. But while Horus's star was the Eastern Star, that was technically Venus. That's also the name of the female Freemason group, the Order of the Eastern Star, which is the emblem, the Star of David looking type emblem of the Masonic order for the female. So it's like the Freemasons, but women. And so the Star of David actually has a very interesting connection. And the Eastern Star looks just like the Star of David, but the Star of David has all the different planets on all the different points on the 6 points. And in the middle is the sun, further pointing to heliocentrism, and also the fact that there was astrology and placements of emphasis with the Star of David in Judaism. So the Bible might have pushed away a lot of the connections between astrology and the Bible and, divinity and all of that. But there are a lot of interesting actual clues in real history if you dive deep enough. So those are just little tidbits of information. But Horus's Eastern Star was the point where people knew that he was actually born. So it was like how people knew that he had arrived, just like the Star of Bethlehem or the Northern Star was Jesus's point. So it was interesting that the Star of Bethlehem was the signal to the 3 wise men to show up, because the 3 wise men were actually astrologers. Even in the Bible, like Christians agree with the fact that the 3 wise men were actually astrologers. But it's interesting, I guess, the timing, because December 25th is the day that the sun is born, but it's like reborn in the sky, because post Winter Solstice, the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, the sun kind of hangs out in the sky, and it's very shorter days. It's known as the shortest day of the year, the 21st usually. That's also an opening point to an incredible solar energy, which brings naturally the birth of the Son of God. So when we see the connection between the December 25th date actually being the birthday of other saviors or Messiah types throughout history, the story of Jesus doesn't become as unique as it does symbolic. So the symbols that I enjoy looking at are the fact of, like, you see the 12 disciples, of course, and that's like kind of the easy one with the 12 Zodiac signs. But if you think about it, there's no freaking way that Jesus was a Capricorn. I'll just put that out there. I appreciate all the Capricorns that think they could sacrifice themselves for a bunch of people, but there's no way. Scientists and astrologers agree that this Star of Bethlehem was a triple conjunction of Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter and Pisces around, I think it was 7 BC. So this triple conjunction formed like a triangle or a giant light in the sky. That with like a full moon in Pisces would be a massive stellium. So I believe the full moon, no, it would have to be the full moon in Virgo. So of a virgin birth. That's where, sorry, I knew exactly where I was going with this. Sometimes I got to slow my brain down to catch up with my mouth. So the virgin birth, right? Every Pisces season, there is a full moon in Virgo, because naturally the full moon is going to be in the opposite sign. So just like my favorite full moon that just happened, not the full moon in Scorpio, every Taurus season is a doozy. So the full moon in Virgo would have had to been happening around the same time as this conjunction in 7 BCE. So that kind of indicates to me, born of a virgin birth. The moon in astrology represents the feminine, the sun is the masculine. And in this case, I believe that after the full moon in Pisces season, of a virgin birth, I believe that Jesus came back around that time. So it might not have been the actual full moon, but as most of you know, because most of you are very informed people that have found me through your natural quest of knowledge, most of you are aware that the moon stays full for quite some time. It's not like a new moon where it's completely dark, but it's not like, oh, it's a full moon and then it just starts back over again. It fades off again until it gets to a new moon. And the full moon I believe, would have been very visible still for about a week after the full moon in Virgo during Pisces season. So he could have been a Pisces or an Aries. Don't tell your Aries friends that Jesus was an Aries. It's going to make them way worse. I'm an Aries. We don't need any more of our big-headedness to get to us. And going around telling everybody that Jesus was an Aries would be a little bit crazy anyways. I think they already know that the most self-sacrificing person in the world would have to be a Pisces. So it's like Pisces being self-sacrificing in that like melodramatic way, and then Aries being self-sacrificing in that pioneering, like I want to do it first way. That's one side of his birth. The other side of his, the arguments for his birth date would be Virgo. So he would have been born 8/22. The 8/22 day is very important, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the 8/22 is the Leo to Virgo transition, Leo to Virgo transition. And so going from Leo, the huge heart chakra, the 5th house, into the 6th house. 6th house is known as the service to others, duty, responsibility, and the physical body. So the sacrifice of the physical body as a Virgo would be very representative of the physical body connection. I see it more as maybe being born in Aries, but like with a Virgo moon somehow, or like there's so many different ways that you can interpret that. But the 8/22 is the 22 day is very, very symbolic because the 22 is the kill or be killed degree. And it's not anaretic like the 29 degree, but it's a very, very, very strong degree. It's also a Capricorn degree and a Capricorn number. The master builder number is the 22 as well in numerology. And 8 is the infinite loop. So the infinite master builder would be what Jesus would be in the month of August. So it's interesting to think of his birthday in August as well. I think my grandma Florence would agree that Jesus had to be a Virgo because how else would he get anything done? Also, the symbol of Pisces was the fish. And I don't know if you guys have seen all those like WWJD things. I don't know if those are still in existence, but I had them. I had What Would Jesus Do bracelets. And then I also love the movie Dogma. So I don't know my spectrum of how seriously I took religion. I know that it was like one of those things in my life that was like I know I should be doing this. But then I turned it into like almost a scholarly approach. I had to like know everything and start fact finding everything. And I really pissed off my incredibly religious family, but who cares, right? I'm still here and they still love me. The one thing I want to go over real quick, just because I don't really think there's a lot that we could dive into with this, because I'm not going to like break down the personality types of the 12 disciples. That's just not what I'm going to do. There's so many links and so many videos and things you can look that are in the description that can kind of lead you to your own story, because I like giving you guys enough information to where you can form your own opinions and you can find your own facts and you can find your own way that this story resonates with you. Because as we've found out, this is not an original story to just Jesus. This is an original story to human nature in a way that you can look at the story of Jesus and be like, he was our time's version of, Buddha and Krishna. And, some could even say like Thor was the Norse version of Jesus. So I think looking at the age that we're in is from 0 AD to 2150 AD. So that is the age of Pisces that we are currently in. In 2150 AD, I will not be here unless of some strange medical mystery. I will be chilling elsewhere, but my grandchildren will be here. And I know that the earth and life will look completely different for them. And that's one thing that I love about all the experiments that people have done between science and also spirituality, with people channeling information and downloading information. Gnosticism is real. And Gnosticism is the sacred art of knowing, the divine gift of knowing. And Gnosticism is very, very closely connected to the feminine energy. And so to deny the inner knowing and the divine knowing is something that was very, very, very powerful in the Bible that I did not resonate with. The female voices didn't feel like I feel like they were. And I don't know how I knew that, but it was just this divine, stubborn attitude perhaps, but also a divine clear knowing in my body that women were so much more in the Bible than what the Bible gave them credit for. So quickly going over the disciples and their correlations to the zodiac signs so I can talk to you guys about my favorite subject of how the Bible got so construed. So excited. The zodiac sign, the 12 tribes of Israel, and the 12 disciples, they're all connected. So first is going to be the zodiac sign, the 12 or the tribe of Israel that it's connected to, as well as the disciple from the Bible that it's connected to. So Aries, of course, to start with, is connected to Zebulon and is the disciple of Peter. Taurus is connected to Joseph and is Simon, the disciple. Gemini is connected to the house of, or the tribe of Benjamin and connected to the disciple James. Cancer is the tribe of Isaac and the disciple Andrew. Leo is the tribe of Judah and the disciple John. Virgo is the tribe of Naphtali, excuse me and for butchering that, and the disciple Philip. Libra is the tribe of Asher and the disciple Nathaniel. Scorpio is the tribe of Dan and the disciple Thomas. Sagittarius is the tribe of Gad and the disciple James. Capricorn is the Simeon tribe of Israel and the disciple Matthew. Aquarius is the Reuben tribe of Israel and the disciple Thad. Pisces is the Levi tribe of Israel and the disciple Judas. So it is interesting that the Judas and Pisces are together. I'm sure you can form your own correlation to that, but I also wanted to kind of like bridge that little gap between how the 12 could really come into place. 12 is a very powerful number in religion. So stay tuned to all the different 12s that we're going to see symbology wise. So 12 houses, 12 zodiac signs, all of that, 12 months in a year, so many different correlations. I'll let you guys, I'll figure that part out. But the Council of Nicea is where I start to get incredibly angry at the church. So we're going back to 325 AD is where my anger starts with the church. And it's not anger like I'm going to sit here and condemn everything they've ever done. I think what the church's mission was to provide enlightenment and to also provide community and sanctuary. Unfortunately, it got into the hands of some very corrupted and twisted men, which I think is a common theme throughout history. I don't really reside or I guess I don't really align myself with, modern feminism. I would like to say that there are a hell of a lot more receipts of men causing a lot of problems, especially during this time. And women aren't innocent victims. Okay. There's no stepping away from the fact that there's a lot of men and women of the church that use their power for not so great things. But Emperor Constantine is the origin of my anger when he decided to have a meeting and a deciding point of who is going to be in the Bible and who is not. It's like getting invited to a birthday party that is going to be known throughout time as a very important birthday party. No, this is not anything like that, so please ignore me. Being on this council meant you got to structure and write the Bible, essentially. The Dead Sea Scrolls were left out. The Book of Enoch was left out. The book of, I believe, Esther and a couple books of other women that were known to be very prominent in Jesus's teachings and throughout the Old Testament. Their writings were completely left out. Like, who cares about them? Very, very interesting to pick and choose the information. But after this happened, the church became the all-knowing, all-controlling, also kind of like a bank too. They had incredible power. They had incredible reach. Unless you're a Christian practicing from the esoteric knowledge and working with the Dead Sea Scrolls and all the books that have fallen out of the Bible's teachings, you are working with fear-based texts. It's a very true thing. If you're working with a common average Bible, you are working with a cherry-picked group of messages from Jesus, because the one message that the Bible was trying to convey during this time, and the Bible as it is, during or after the Council of Nicaea, the one message it was trying to establish was fear. The fear of sinning, the fear of God's wrath, the fear of God in general. So when you look at the skeptics' comments about astrology and about how Christianity condemns astrology, that's fine, because the Christianity that you're referring to is the Christianity that Emperor Constantine cherry-picked over, and is not the original text and is not the original teachings, because the original teachings of the Bible could be summed up with one word. And that word is love. Love is the only message that was being taught in the Bible, to the point that loving and being loved was the only thing that was left of Jesus. His existence, of course, there's no physical proof of it. The Shroud of Turin turned out to be a medieval kind of relic or thing that they sold. There's been 10 Commandment tablets that have been found in Ohio. There's been so many replicas and so many things of the biblical times. Yet the thing about Jesus' existence is that he lives within. And he lives within because of the fact that we're all connected to that consciousness. And with our consciousness, we're connected to the Creator. And the Creator, you can say, is God, infinite intelligence, whatever you feel comfortable with calling it, whether it be an entity or it be an energy. The connection to the Creator is within us. And so a lot of the Christian beliefs go against astrology, because why would you be so self-absorbed? Or why would you, why would you be so consumed with learning yourself? The thing is, in order to help others, you have to know thyself. And in order to grow, and in order to set the example, and in order to be aware, knowing yourself is key. And whether you do it through life experience and you stumble and fall, and when you find a connection that helps you connect more to your spiritual purpose, it might not be astrology. It could be anything. But the connection is what makes us all heart-based and not fear-based. When you operate from the heart and you know that any tools of the celestial bodies that could possibly predict anything, you have free will. It is your soul's blueprint. Astrology is the ideal with all earthly problems like money and time and resources, all of those things. Astrology is a study of you at your best and without all the stressors that you may have. If you were at your best and you were nurtured, loved, cared for, and everything was great, it can show you the best, and it can also show you the worst of you. And it's up to you to decide the interpretation. It's not up to astrology to dictate your life. The word devil doesn't show up in the Old Testament and is very rarely mentioned. I think in the King James Bible, I think we talked about how it's not even in the King James Version. But it's D, meaning from, and vil, V-I-L, meaning from the Latin word vilis, or vile, worthless, cheap. So it's from vile, from worthlessness, from a cheap place, from a paltry feeling, or it's like through a paltry feeling. Vil can also mean which can be bought. So something that can be bought. It's a fake feeling. It's not something that you can, I guess, divinely connect to. So the devil is simply something that is a false representation of the Creator, or false worship of another idol or icon or mindset, whatever you want to interpret that as. But when you look at what Emperor Constantine did to all of these terms and creating almost like a fear of what would happen if you didn't live exactly like these rules, it created a very controlling position of the church throughout history, and it ended up letting a lot of bloodshed be justified in the name of religion. And the Vatican had a stranglehold over Europe for years. The Vatican had a stranglehold over pretty much the entire world for years. With recent, issues coming to light, the Vatican, I think, is getting a little bit more humbled in these times. But the nature of oneness with self and the world around you is the message of the Bible, the autonomy, thinking for yourself, not giving in to the shadow sides of yourself, of if you want to talk about the 7 chakras, the root chakra, sacral chakra, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown. Those are the 7 deadly sins. If they, were transmuted into their polar opposite, lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, pride. Those are the 7 deadly sins that they talk about, but I think they're kind of the shadow sides of the chakras. So those are also the 7 devils that Jesus exorcised from Mary Magdalene when he met her. And those are the 7 deadly sins. So I feel like there's direct correlation there, talking about what you give into and what your body succumbs to, and keeping your energetic centers whole and pure. The connection between chakras and also the planets are extensive. So I could go on for that, like for hours, I'm pretty sure. But wrapping up a little bit, just the connection between all of the energy in the Bible and the history of the Bible and the symbolism of the Bible and the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the stories of the gods, the Greek mythology, all of the beliefs, and especially the development of astrology through, of course, the Babylonians, Mesopotamians, the Chinese astrologers that had so many different insights and connections between nature and the animal spirit with the zodiac. All of these things come together to bring us one of the greatest tools to study our human history ever. And the fact that you can find these tools celebrated throughout realms where quantum healing, hypnosis, therapy patients are being regressed to their past lives in the Essene community, talking about all the different ideals and inner workings of what was truly going on in those esoteric, hidden, mysterious communities. Like, it's incredible what is out there for all of us to find. So I really want to kind of like separate the idea that astrology is a self-absorption based study and that it's something that can be condemned, because honestly, changing the world starts with changing yourself, and understanding the world starts with understanding yourself. And what better tool than using the heavens at the time of your birth to understand the magic of you? So thank you for this entire episode. This is a very extended version of what I'm going to be talking about over on Love and Science Network. Thank you so much for watching all of this, and all the comments, all the questions, all the feedback. I want you guys to think about how symbology and things can be symbols. Even things that we take as verifiable fact can be symbols for things. And through astrology and through understanding symbols throughout history of time and cultures, you can understand anything. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next episode with the Astrology of America. Yay!